Welcome to Straits Talk, a podcast by Straits Interactive where we talk about the value, risks, and constraints of data protection, data governance, and generative AI. I'm tech writer Grace Chen, and with me today is Alvin Tau, co-founder of Straits Interactive, and a good friend, Seah Teck Meng, who is the Regional Data Protection Officer at ManpowerGroup. You know, today, there's so much data hanging around, and I've been reading up, right? And so they say that when you do AI, the first thing you need to do is to clean up your data. So data management is important. You're a practitioner, Teck Meng. So tell us how you moved from data protection, the gathering of data, now you protect the data, to data management and data governance. What was your experience?
Well, for my company, because we are human resource, Manpower has a lot of our people's data. So for the longest time, we didn't know that we have that data sitting in one corner. And then as more of technology is data driven, then we have data scientists and also business development specialists in a company. We realize that probably we can make use of the data to come up with new insights we can share with our customers, or even come up with new services. So that is where this moving over from data protection to data management actually takes place, because this will not only involve in structuring the data, because as you know, previously when there were no guidelines, the data were pretty unstructured. So for us to use the data meaningfully is really useless. So it goes to data management. We have to clean up the data, structure it so that it can make sense and can be useful. Then it triggers another question, especially with personal data laws all around the region coming up, and which set us out very strict rules about how you can use or you cannot use personal data. That is where we realize that, data management is not just use whatever data you have, but we have to use it properly and according to what the personal privacy law there is in the country. So that is how we actually move over to start looking at data governance or the data.
It's not an overnight transition, right? So how long did that take you?
Well, I think it started slow, but it accelerated over the last 2 years. I joined Manpower 3 years ago. We are still talking about protecting data. Then we start noticing a shift right about 18 months ago. And suddenly, because of ChatGPT came in on board, then everything sped up.
Okay, so talking about ChatGPT, it is not just putting in the prompt and then, getting the outcomes you want. It can do much more, and it has an impact on personal data. So what's the turning point for you, to tell or to share with your colleagues that ChatGPT can be abused?
Well, I think what my first experience with a real chat AI tool is actually from Straits Interactive. So the capability to actually when I tested it, it really blew my mind off, because I never expected an AI could be that capable. Right? And obviously, I took it back to my privacy team and demonstrate a few functions that and they were amazed as well. And one of the very good example that I showed them was the translation capability.
It can speak different languages.
Yes, and even the most obscure language. Like, for example, I did a very interesting test. I have a paragraph in English, so I keep translating. Like, for example, I translate to Chinese, simplified Chinese, then to traditional Chinese, to Japanese. That means it's consequent. It is consequently translated, and never go back to the original English passage.
So it translated from the Chinese to
Japanese,
to whatever,
Korean, whatever language. And when we do with the final version. We translated back in English, and the last English version is still retains the original.
Did you try any obscure languages?
Yes, we try one language, which is Canada. In Singapore.
Can you spell that?
Oh, Kannada.
So it's an Indian dialect.
It's an Indian dialect. Right in Singapore, we are familiar with Hindi, with Tamil about it. But then there is this Indian dialect called Kannada. And we actually did translate to that language.
Right.
And I got my my colleague in India who actually speaks the dialect actually to verify to compare and verify whether the contents of the translated Kannada language actually the meaning is it retained compared to the original English version ones. And he said that he was really impressed. It retained the original meaning of the English passage.
So, Alvin, with the introduction of Gen AI into the next layer of data governance, what has been the impact
for data governance? I think just like, Teck Meng, right? You are in privacy, and when the discussions about, can we use this data for analytics? With Gen AI coming on board, right? It's able to explain why, it's able to then create new content based on that data. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think skill sets of the governance professionals have to embrace what on earth is this AI. Like the fact, just a simple demonstration by you, right, to your colleagues, suddenly you say, actually this thing is more than just a chat.
Yeah.
And you can do all these things and the integrity of the meaning is still there. Mm-hmm. Then subsequently you can do additional things, actually summarize this thing, give analysis. Nowadays you can put in a spreadsheet, it can do analysis for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So that kind of functionality, if the data governance professionals don't see it, it's going to be difficult for them to enable ethical and responsible use of AI, right? That some companies go the other way. They take a blunt hammer and say, hey, this one very dangerous, cannot use.
Yeah.
But you know what happens? There will be the employees who have their phone.
Yes. And then they do it on their phone.
Tether, right?
Yeah.
And then they do it. I have CTOs also mentioned that, right? Because they will still use it and just tether outside the corporate firewall.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with technology so prevalent, I think if you want to impose a law, a ban on the use of technology, I think it's almost impossible.
How do you go about convincing your colleagues?
Well, convincing my colleagues is basically that is show and tell, real examples. See, I can create deepfakes on Capybara. You see, is it very real, very convincing? So if we are not careful in how we actually use the data in terms of when we incorporate into Gen AI, it's going to create a lot of risk, not only for the company, but for the individuals who may be impacted. And we don't know who the individuals are right now. Yeah.
So you have taken the AI governance course from Straits Interactive. Right? Can you tell us what your experience has been?
Well, as I mentioned before, I was blown off by the AI tool Capybara introduced by Straits Interactive. Before that, all the AI courses I attended are just like PowerPoint slides. Yeah, you understand probably the concepts, but then you don't have a feel, and you cannot really understand how the theoretical part of governance, how does it really going to be applied to a real AI tool like Straits Interactive. So that actually makes us scratch our head as to what is our data governance system is going to be like. Right. Yeah. So that's where we are right now in ManpowerGroup, and we are actually doing our own research and finding ways to better manage our data.
Okay, so on top of that AI governance course that you are delivering now, what else are you doing?
Well, we look at it from 3 T's, as it were, right? There's a digital transformation side of things, where we are educating people how can you use it for your company via different assistants. We're providing tools like what you're doing right now. I think you're prototyping right internally to a small set users on the usefulness of AI assistance in their function. For example, HR, right? It could be writing a CV or analyzing CVs, writing job descriptions, then maybe helping HR write policies. Very control functions, but it's useful straight away and very little risk of compromising data. The only thing they must be able to check the outputs that come out. So we actually are doing workshops right now. We've done it very successfully recently to company executives or management team. 2 hours, what are the usage, like what you experience? The usage, they must use it to see what it's like, because here third party can't tell. After that, they say, okay, then we look at the value of the AI given the field assistance. Then we say, okay, a certain risk, let me tell you what it looks like. So we expose certain risks that they can see for themselves, whether it's biasness and stuff like that, right? Or inaccuracies. Then we can say, okay, doesn't mean you cannot use it. There's certain controls you can put in place we recommend, which is what you guys are doing. So again, where we are seeing right now is that if the data governance can be a party to empowering people, right, and onboarding technology because they have played with themselves, then they won't be a showstopper, right? They're actually part of the journey to onboard slowly, right, responsibly, right? Subsequently, then when the users are educated, and the whole social I mentioned, it was a senior management who would say that, okay, I don't think my guys understand they cannot upload these kind of things, why we are having these restrictions. The minute we showed them, they understood why and the power of it, why certain policies were put in place. And then it was much easier, because rather than I told you the blunt hammer cannot use, they'll find ways around because they didn't know why it cannot be used.
Yeah, I think that's my experience as well. If you just ban it without any reasoning, people are very frustrated. I think to them it's a useful tool, why I can't use it. So it's always good to convince them by giving the reasons why. If you really want to ban it, give your reasons, and the reason has to be convincing. If not, then you have to modify your own policies, allow use with a certain check and balance in place.
So data governance with generative AI can be done.
Yes.
You accept that you need to understand what it can do, and then you need to educate people. So, but the first thing to do is get yourself show and tell.
Yes.
That is the best way to convince your colleague.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Straits Talk. Thank you.